Now, I know we're not officially in an election campaign yet because the election hasn't been called, but we've basically been in a campaign since the start of the year. And the one thing that's been missing from all the talk of promises and policies is any real discussion about migration. New net overseas migration numbers dropped today from the Bureau of Statistics. For the September quarter, it was 90,000 people. Now, if that continues through for the rest of the financial year, it'll mean 100,000 more people will have moved to Australia than the Albanese government promised in last year's budget. They projected that migration would be 260,000 people for the financial year. 90,000 times 4, of course, would be 360,000. And they've basically already admitted that this will happen. The target was revised up from 260,000 to 340,000 in the mid-year budget update. Now, sure, it's down on the 446,000 net arrivals last financial year, but it's still well above what it was supposed to be. So now we have to find houses, cars, schools, jobs and so on for 100,000 odd more people than we anticipated. How do you do that? Well, the answer, as you well know, is that you pay more for things because more people are fighting for them. More than 1 million people have moved here permanently or long-term under the Albanese government. More than 1 million people looking for somewhere to live. And anyone who's tried to find a rental recently knows just how squeezed the market is. The rental vacancy rate in Sydney is 1.5%. It's 0.7% in Adelaide, 0.6% in Perth, the same in Hobart, and 1% in Brisbane. These are serious lows. Everything is full up. So we'll just bring in another 1,000 people every day and pretend everything is fine. So why hasn't the coalition properly fired up about this? Are they worried about being called racist? I don't know. Because it's not racist to acknowledge that people who already live here, and that includes migrants, by the way, deserve priority over people who arrived yesterday or perhaps haven't even arrived yet. They seem to be fiddling around the edges. You saw the business this week about maybe having a referendum on deporting criminal dual citizens. I mean, okay, sure, I don't think there are too many people who disagree with the principle, apart from maybe terrorists and paedophiles who have citizenship in some third world hellhole that they might have to go back to. But come on, that'd be a reasonably small number of people. And it means a referendum, of course, and we're a bit scared of those after the voice. What else has there been? Dutton announced last year that he'd ban foreign investors from buying existing homes.
If I'm the next Prime Minister, I will work to ban foreign investors and temporary residents from buying existing homes for 2 years. This will give young people a fair shot at owning their first home. With housing affordability worse than ever, it's time to prioritise Australians who are working hard to get into the market. It's simple. We'll make sure homes are for those who need them the most. Australians.
Now, again, I don't think anyone except foreign investors would disagree with the principle of the proposal, and the Prime Minister's since done it. It comes into effect next month. But foreign buyers make up about 2% of the market. One real estate agent told the Daily Telegraph's real estate writer Jonathan Chancellor a couple of weeks ago that it'd stop about 1,600 sales a year. Now, sure, that is 1,600 more homes an Australian can buy, and I don't have a problem with that being the case, but it's only 1,600. What about the 1 million people who've moved here in the past 3 years? It's a drop in the ocean. Then there was the stuff yesterday about adding a question to the citizenship test about anti-Semitism. And again, it's immigration adjacent, but it's just small fry stuff. If people want to become a citizen, they'll just tick the box that they know will help them become a citizen. They'll have no compunction about lying about whether they're anti-Semitic. And it's a bit bloody late anyway, because you have to live here for 4 years before you can apply for citizenship, and you have to be a permanent resident for at least a year. So if you've made it that far and we haven't kicked you out yet, well, the game's up, really. The only real promise that the coalition's made on immigration is to cut net migration to about 160,000.
Well, Tom, our proposal is that we bring back the net overseas migration to a figure of about 160,000. If you look at the different programs, that means that we would cut back the permanent migration program, the refugee and humanitarian program, and that we would bring back international student numbers as well.
That was May last year, but he'd already dropped it by December.
You're not sticking to the 160,000. You're not sticking to the 160,000 target for net migration then?
Andrew, what we've said is that we want our migration program to step down in the first 2 years. It will ramp up again in years 3 and 4, and we will bring down the numbers who come through the humanitarian and refugee program back to the long-run average of that. That's what will work for our country. Again, we'll have a look at the economic settings, as we said at the time of the policy announcement. We'll have a look at the economic settings when we come into government.
I mean, how hard can it be to say we will cap migration? I mean, this should be such an obvious election issue. And if they're not sure how to sell it, here's how to do it. The government keeps saying that economic growth is slow, but at least it's still growing. Except, of course, it's not, because 87% of jobs filled in the past 2 years have been in the public service or government-related sectors like health and education. Nearly a third of jobs created in 2023 were linked to the NDIS. So there's minuscule growth in the private sector without businesses taking their money from the government. And this has been the Ponzi scheme of Albanese's mass migration. Bring in all these people and then the government will invent jobs in the public sector to service the needs of these new people. So on paper, it looks like there is economic growth, but in reality, we're going backwards. So it does mean that on paper, we didn't go into recession, except of course that households went through 7 straight quarters of recession. They had less real money in their hands. Household GDP went backwards 7 quarters in a row. And the effect of all that, the government not having to say we're officially in recession, is that house prices have gone up, rents have gone up, inflation stayed higher for longer than it needed to, and interest rates stayed higher for longer than they needed to. Albanese and his mates let 1 million people into the country and then gave them taxpayer-funded jobs to make his record look better, even though you had to pay for it. It directly made the cost of living worse. You took one for the team and went backwards so that Jim Chalmers didn't have to say we were officially in recession. That should be front and centre of this election campaign. It is such an easy win for the coalition. So why aren't they using it?